Good morning. You're watching the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati.
And I am Oji Akbi. We've got a great show lined up for you over the next 2 hours. So sit back, relax, and let's kickstart your day because the morning show begins right now.
Small and medium enterprises are often described as the major engine of a country, which encourages the growth of jobs and wealth creation in the economic system. Today, we'll be spending considerable time taking a look at the conditions under which these businesses operate.
We will also be looking at the creative part of fashion. The process of dreaming up a design, sketching it out, and making it come alive is one of the most important parts in the business. I bet it isn't always seamless.
Talking about the betting culture, it is a multi-billion-dollar venture, and with the Premier League starting today, it will be here to speak. There's also a moral debate as regards this trend. Should it be called gambling, as originally known, or should it be called betting, which is a more pleasant word?
Our first guest, Peter Bamkole, a pioneer director at the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan-Atlantic University, will be joining us to discuss the significance of SMEs today. Also, Destiny Ndiwari, a creative director of DNA by Iconic Vanity, she talks about taking her ideas from sketchpad to runway. So
exciting. But before then, we'll catch up on news making some headlines across the globe. Then the executive director of This Day newspapers, Emmanuel Nefeni, will be joining us to review the papers. And of course, our in-house analyst, Stephanie Coker, will be filling us in on what's trending.
And today, on our take, we'll be discussing the yardstick used by National Broadcasting Commission in declaring songs unfit and if the commission is just too sensitive. It's going to be all this and more only on The Morning Show.
As a fashion writer, I know how quickly trends are created and changed. In business, it's no different. To stay ahead, I needed a plan flexible enough to meet my changing communication needs. More Business 2.0 didn't just give me voice and data in one package. I got a whole lot more. With More Business, setting up my website was no problem. But I'm not just a fashion writer. I also own a home decor store before I decided to open an accessory store. With my customized More Business plan, managing my staff's communication is easy. No matter how frequently they come, or they go. With 9mobile's new online self-service this week, I could adapt my plans to include this.
From 2,000 Naira, choose a business bundle, customize your staff's voice and data lines, and enjoy a variety of add-on business services. Dial *200*5# now to subscribe. More Business.
In a fast-paced world, you need the ability to make everything move at your own speed. Stay ahead and not miss anything. That's why I'm on More Life Complete, which lets me call everyone in Nigeria on all networks at just 15 kobo per second. You can also call any line in the United States, Canada, UK, Germany, India, China, and Malaysia too, at just 15 kobo per second. And just when you think life can't get any easier, I get 15 free minutes to call anyone in the 9mobile family.
Just booked your ticket to London.
Before you think I've got to compete on More Life, I also get 15 minutes free browsing to catch up on sports updates and anything online. Now that's what I call the complete package.
Nigeria. We are 198 million productive people with over 900,000 square kilometers of fertile land. Nigeria's banking system has emerged strong and resilient from the 2016 crisis, which has enhanced our productivity in agribusiness and manufacturing. Come, invest in Nigeria's agribusiness, manufacturing, and value-added mining. Enjoy the Central Bank of Nigeria-led initiatives in funding interventions, stabilized exchange rate, friendly capital repatriation regime, and many more. The Central Bank of Nigeria's robust monetary policy and interventions under President Buhari's administration and positioned the economy to target and attain a GDP growth of 6% with a strong and growing external reserves. Come, invest in Nigeria. Nigeria, ready for business.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News.
Joining us now to take a look at the news stories making headlines across the globe is Arise News correspondent Aron Akerijola. Hello, Aron.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to be here today.
Good morning.
Yes, fantastic Friday, I must say.
Yeah, thank God it's Friday. Okay, what's
All right,
happening
a bit
around
to
the
actually
world?
find out what's going on around the world. Let's tell you that one person is missing and more than 1,600 people have been evacuated with the help of helicopters after torrential rain caused flooding in southern France. 5 campsites in the Gard region were evacuated by hundreds of firefighters. Men is sent in from other areas as the rainwater swelled rivers. According to France's Interior Minister, divers are taking part in search for the man. Officials say 119 children in Saint-Julien-de-Perroyas have been to an emergency shelter. Several parts of central France and eastern France are on flood alert after a blazing heat wave ended abruptly in storms on Thursday. Locals are being urged to keep a close eye on weather conditions.
This is very sad, Aron.
Really sad, I must say.
I think something similar like this happened in Greece. And
Yes.
I think that we have to take time to protect our ecosystem. I think that's the problem going on right now.
Well, in fact, it looks like it's the whole of southern Europe,
Yeah.
that is threatened. The incident in Greece was really tragic.
Yeah.
40 persons died. Properties were destroyed. People were running into the sea to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And then you've had the fires in California. Also quite devastating. But this is the reality, as she said, of climate change.
Yes.
And the fact that people can no longer play the ostrich about climate change.
But I don't know if that can be said about Nigeria and how we actually respond to climate change, because sometimes we say to ourselves, now the weathers are becoming hot in Nigeria, to be realistic, and how do we react to things that actually happen? Rather, we always want to say when things like this happen, they are acts of God.
Yeah,
Well, we have a
lucky,
Federal
actually,
Ministry of
not to.
Environment.
Yes.
You know that when climate change became an issue, the federal government established the Environmental Protection Agency also at the state levels, and that led to the emergence of the Ministry of Environment. But it's usually the fashion in Nigeria to make statements about some of these things without really, developing the capacity to deal with the emergencies that may result. But there's, of course, a National Emergency Management Agency. Because the lesson to learn, particularly from what has happened in France and what happened in California, is about the quality of response.
Yes.
Look
the
at
response
Greece.
time.
In Greece, a committee was set up to probe, the relevant authorities, and there were accusations that the response time and the quality of management was not good enough.
True talk. True talk. Let's tell you that 3 pedophiles were publicly shot and hung from cranes after the group brutally raped and killed a 10-year-old boy. Shocking photos show the men dressed in blue overalls, handcuffed and surrounded by Yemeni soldiers as crowds watched their public execution take place in city streets. Authorities ordered the rapists to lie down on the floor, pointing a gun to their head before shooting them with an M5 5 times in the heart. The rapists' dead corpses were actually propped up in the air by a crane in Sa'an, in Yemen, publicly displayed in front of crowds, serving as a firm warning to anyone who dare to commit such crimes. Capital punishment in Yemen is legal, and the country has one of the highest execution rates per capita in the world.
Wow. That was a very harsh execution process.
I want to term it jungle justice if you'd ask me.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, what they did was absolutely wrong. Yes, the 10-year-old boy that was raped by 3 men. I mean, it's a horrific crime to ever happen to a child. But I mean, the system of capital punishment, I don't know. I mean, I don't really agree with it, but you know, sometimes the jungle justice has to happen for human beings to really learn.
There are people who even say that pedophiles deserve worse fate.
Yeah.
Okay, because if you look at the details of the story, it's clearly a case of inhumanity, of abuse.
Yes.
The young boy was going to visit his grandmother. He was abducted, he was handcuffed, and then he was brutally raped.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the story itself, you know, it makes you shudder what goes on in some people's
because
heads.
what they've succeeded in doing is destroy the boy's life
Yes.
as it stands right now, because the boy will never remain the same. That part I understand, but as humans, we always want to look at the kind of punishment meted out to another human being.
The story, the position of the authorities involved in this. Don't forget, Sana'a is under the control of the Houthi regime.
Yeah.
And Yemen itself is troubled, you know. But this is a human angle story coming from that country that has been practically taken apart by corruption, by drought, by famine, by all kinds of issues. And it's one of the poorest countries in the world.
True.
Okay, but I think that whole drama about hoisting those guys on the crane and all that,
shooting them in the
they
heart.
said was to send a message to any other person, you know, to serve as a deterrence.
I think it was taking it too far.
I
It's almost
think
looking like the Wild Wild West, what they used to do back in the day. I think taking it a little bit too far there, being a little bit dramatic, if you'd ask me. They could have done it in a better way, in a more humane way, than actually killing them like that brutally and now hanging them like they did to pirates back in the day for everybody to see.
And I also feel like the pedophiles are not mentally stable. I don't think anybody would, in their right mind, would want to rape a child. So I think that they should also consider that aspect, that
And you
they're
see,
not
what
okay.
even makes it curious is that the people who raped the boy, they're also young people. The oldest among them, the third one is 27.
Wow.
The other two, just 19 years old. And you wonder, why will a 19-year-old be that brutal?
Yes.
You know, so it raises a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But in that kind of troubled region of the world, anything is possible.
Because foundations and also the fundamentals from the beginning I believe should be checked, and that is where you begin to correct some of these wrongs, and so that they don't grow up and you try to cut the tree from the roots rather than from the stem, or rather from the stem rather than from the roots. Okay, so in the bit you actually moving on. At least 29 children have been killed and 30 wounded in Saudi-led coalition airstrike in Yemen, the International Committee of Red Cross have said. The children were traveling on a bus that was actually hit at a market in Dayan in the northern province of Sada. Well, they said that the health ministry run by the rebel Houthi movement put the death toll at 43 and said 61 persons were wounded. The coalition, which is backing Yemen's government in a war with the Houthis, say that its action were legitimate. However, it insists that it never deliberately targets civilians, but human rights groups have actually accused it of bombing markets, schools, hospitals, and residential areas. Meanwhile, the new UN Special Envoy to Yemen, former British diplomat Martin Griffith, is planning to invite the warring parties to Geneva in September to discuss a framework for negotiations.
Yeah, there's been a lot of civilian casualties in Yemen, and I mean, I think it's becoming a big problem internationally right now, because I mean, if you're committing this, you're committing a war crime, correct?
True.
So it's really sad. It's a really sad.
As I always say, when two elephants.
Yeah.
Well, you know, again,
Yes.
I mean, the position of the UN as expressed is that it is a war crime, you know, if you target the civilian population in a conflict situation. I think the situation we have in Yemen is really, really very unfortunate. Since 2011, that country has been really troubled. As you have this fight, and then the religious undertone makes it even worse, because, you know, the Houthis are Shiites, you know, and they are backed by Iran. And the Sunni-led coalition by Saudi Arabia, you know, is fighting at one level a religious war, and at the same time making it impossible for the Houthis to overrun to overrun Yemen. And then, of course, it's the people that suffer at the end of the day. And Sada, of course, is currently under the control of the Houthi movement.
Yeah, one thing that is urgent is that we have to know that we have to ensure peace in that region, correct?
And we're actually hoping the interventions and the peace talks that should happen in Geneva will actually come to a decisive conclusion. Usually when we have peace talks like that, at some point in the negotiation process, it always breaks down, But I'm actually hoping...
Well, I think beyond that also, where sanctions may be necessary, those sanctions should be
meted out to them.
Yes.
Correct. So what's going on in Zimbabwe?
Let's tell you the Zimbabwe opposition political Tendai Biti has appeared in court in handcuffs on charges of inciting violence after he was deported from Zambia. Zambia's government rejected Mr. Biti's request for asylum on Wednesday. Let's say that Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa said that Mr. Biti had been released on bail following his intervention. At least 6 people were killed 2 days after the vote in clashes between security forces and the MDC alliance supporters who alleged that their leader, Nelson Chimasa, had been robbed of victory.
Well, I think the key message here is to first address Zambia. Zambia is claiming that when BT submitted his application, that they were not convinced that there was a crisis situation in his country, and that he was fleeing from submitting himself to due process. You know, after the elections on July 30 in Zimbabwe, won by the current president Mnangagwa, there was an outbreak of violence. Supporters of the opposition party, the MDC, alleged that there was rigging, they were robbed of victory, and the army descended on those protesters. On August 1, about 6 persons were killed. Then the government insisted that, 9 persons are the prime suspects. One of them being BT, who had been finance minister 2009 to 2013, and a strong member of the MDC. So the guy fled. But when he got to Zambia, they said, no, we'll take you back. They handcuffed him and handed him back to the Zimbabwean authorities. And that's a violation of an international principle. And it's good that the United Nations Committee on Human Rights has come out to say this is unacceptable.
Well, on what grounds did they send him back?
No, I already said that they said there is no crisis in his country, and he will not qualify for asylum as a refugee or as someone running away from political persecution. But the facts indicate the contrary. So I think it's something that has to be addressed, and we should speak to the president that, look, you may have won the election, but the MDC is going to court. People should not be persecuted. The rule of law should be protected. If there are issues in that election, it's for the courts to determine those issues.
Because he's just running away so that he doesn't present himself, correct? So what's going on here? Let's go back here in Nigeria.
All right, in what could be described as a test for the 2019 battle of the ruling All Progressive Congress, the APC and the People's Democratic Party, the PDP held rallies in Dara, hometown of President Muhammadu Buhari in Katsina on Thursday. While the APC drummed support for Ahmad Baba Kaita, its Katsina North senatorial candidate, the PDP wooed the crowd in favor of Kabir Baba Kaita. Coincidentally, the 2 candidates in the election scheduled for Saturday are brothers. On the APC side, where acting President Yemi Osinbajo, Adams Oshomole, national chairman of the APC, Bello Masari, and who is governor of Katsina State, and Abdullahi Ganduje, governor of Kano State. While Rabiu Kwankwaso, former governor of Kano State, Sule Lamido, ex-governor of Jigawa, and Ibrahim Shema, former governor of Katsina, were on the grounds of the PDP.
Unfortunately, we don't have much time to banter about this, but it's such a cute story.
2 brothers going head to head.
Well, whatever happens, they keep it in the family.
That's the most important thing.
That's the most important thing. Well, thank you so much, Aron, for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Time now for a short break. When we return, we'll have the This Day newspaper executive director, Emmanuel Efeni, join us with a review of the top stories on today's newspapers. Stay with us.